Thanks for staying with us on the program. In case you're just joining us, we have been talking about the tensions in the UK elections and what the people think about it. Is there voter apathy or not? But in this second half, we're coming back to Nigeria, Lagos especially, where the heavy rains, which began early this week, submerged streets, particularly residents in low-lying areas like Lekki, Ajah, Victoria Island, and businesses across various districts, disrupting daily life with reports of vehicles trapped in floodwaters and residents stranded in their homes. Now, the aftermath of rains, exacerbated by poor drainage systems and unchecked urban development, underscored the vulnerabilities faced by communities in Lagos during the rainy season.
Now, we're now joined by News Central's Adesewa Odusoga, who has, like many of us, to be honest, who has actually been following the flooding stories. She wasn't out yesterday, but I remember there was a time Shewa was in one of the flooded areas. I wouldn't say which flooded area it was, but I know she was in one of the flooded areas and she had to go into the floods without any wellies, rain boots, or any protective gear to tell the story from, that particular region. Shewa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Honestly, Shewa, I was wishing you were out there again in the rain, but it's a good thing you were not. So
Even
you not be our
actually
rain correspondent.
Me because I had an assignment yesterday, the Lagos Employment Summit,
Exactly.
and it took the camera person, I think, 2 hours from the office to the island. And the
you.
event that was supposed to start by 9 actually started by 12.
Wow.
Because they knew that they had, even the governor of the state was stuck in that flood. So they had to shift the event backward, like say forward, before it started. And then they had to rush the event. And then heading back to the office was almost impossible. In fact, the condition of the wetlands actually cost me because I slept at some point at the event.
We should have been there to cover it.
That should have been some other breaking story.
So I think the event of flooding in Lagos shouldn't be like news to anyone at this point. But yesterday seemed like a repeat of 2022. I don't know if you remember that we had like the worst flood in decades
I do remember, as a matter of
across
fact.
Nigeria this time. But now I think Lagos is seeing the worst of it all. And then there are reports that by 2030, Lagos is going to be floating. And the event yesterday just almost felt like a scare because it's almost like we are already preparing for that time because we're just barely 7 years away from 2030, and then we are seeing an event such as what we experienced. Yes, for the first time, that area of Olopomeji in Ward Third Mainland, I've never seen flood in that area.
While I commiserate with the people who lost some kind of property around that side, I would like to take credit for that video that went viral because it was actually my video.
It was actually
but nobody gave me credit for it. Everybody else stole it and then posted it. Now, and I'll tell my story. So we were on our way to the office, right? And I saw that for the very first time, that particular place was flooded. And then at some point, we saw cars halfway submerged. It was almost impossible, right? But that was exactly what was happening. So we got out of the vehicle and took videos of those cars being flooded, got back into our office vehicle and we're going back. And then there was this trail of kilometers of traffic that built up all the way from Yanoworo to Alapere. And then not long after that, the traffic continued even beyond then and went almost all the way to Bega. It was crazy, and this was before 9 a.m.
Wow.
Now, one thing I want to ask Shewa is, I know you've been following this for a while, and one of your reports caught the attention of the local government chairman of Etiosa local government.
Yes.
And then also we've been seeing, between yesterday and today, the Commissioner for Water Resources and
the
Environment has actually been hands-on, making sure that some of these flooded areas are cleared, particularly that one we talked about just now. Do you think, we've seen this happen several times, but it's like the response we're seeing now is swifter than what we've seen before.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
So I must commend the commissioner you mentioned because for the first time in a while, we are seeing a commissioner that is not just proactive. He's also, he felt it was necessary for him to give reports on social media this time to the people that he serves. He's active on Instagram and Twitter. And then there's one thing I did that was really remarkable yesterday. For every time he captures an area that is flooded, he would send his men to clear up the drainage and then send an update report. But however, we are going to applaud him because we've not seen somebody do the barest minimum like he's doing now in a number of years. But I believe this thing that he's doing now should have been done decades before now. Yeah. Maybe we would not even have issue of flooding in Lagos. We know that Lagos is a coastal line, like they say. But the report you mentioned, when we did a report on the Agungi flood, it doesn't matter if it rains or not in Agungi. The area has been like that. And resident told me this has been the situation for almost 2 decades. whether it rains or not, there is always water on the road. And then when we did that story and then local government decided to take action to clear the drainage, the point where they were clearing, it looks as if nobody has ever visited that place before to take any action. We have grasses, we have the seaweeds and all those things already growing on the site. And it looks like maybe an area that is just opening to development. And this is a place that should look like there's been series of maintenance going on at that point. And really, when they cleared the drainage, when they brought out the obstacles in along the canals, the water on Agungi actually subsided, and the residents actually gave accounts to that. They said, oh, finally they're happy that they can feel the government directly for the first time in many years. And they said, so it means that the government know where the problem is.
And they know what to do.
The problem is trying to tackle the challenge that is on ground. So Lekki is, people call it an overpriced slum, so to speak. But if the government, when we look at the revenue that the government is getting from Lekki, for example, or the Lagos Island generally, we do not expect an area like that to be experiencing such floods. The first Agungi story I did, it was almost like I was swimming. And the waters were not just normal floods. They were really dirty water that had little organisms inside of it. And but while I was there trying to do a story, the woman told me, when you get home, you better go and cleanse yourself in with, antiseptic soap and all those things. And I knew that if that was there just for barely 15 minutes, and then someone is really concerned about, what about people who have to live there? Yeah. And then one of the residents told me again that once it rains in that area, so the school is in the middle of this place, and then students coming from the dry side are the only ones that will be able to come to school. Students coming from the other side will not be able to. So it means whatever happens, if it decides to rain for 1 week, the students coming from this side of the road or the area would not be able to, benefit from whatever is being taught for that week. Even churches, even commercial activities will be shut for as long as the rain falls. I don't know why we have to discuss this in 2022.
I know that for the longest time we have urged the government to do their own part, clearing up the drainage and stuff like that. But I think that what has happened again has brought to light the part that individuals play as well.
Yes.
Just yesterday there was a video while it was raining, while it was flooded, of a family that decided to throw their trash out in the road, And again, I will commend the government because immediately action was taken. Yes. I think the compound was shut or something. So I think that people we cannot say at this point that we do not have that awareness. True. We know that one of the contributory factor, if not the only or the major factor, is the trash that we're throwing. And it doesn't help that even though they're demolishing some buildings, people are still building on structures that are narrowing down the canals. And then the canals are not just narrow, they're now flooded with trash and bottles and things like that. So we cannot exactly say that it's just the government's responsibility at this point, because people are working tirelessly to make sure that Lagos is flooded.
Okay.
Honestly,
I totally get you. And sorry to interrupt you here. And it's not just the island now.
Yes.
I mean, yesterday we saw places on the mainland. We saw places like Oshodi. We saw, Yanoworo, the video
Ajah.
we took. We saw Ajah, Yanoba. We saw Bagada.
Yes.
Where somebody's compound was almost completely, it was duplex. Submerged. And so it's you are correct. If we're talking about the lagoon that is affecting the island, how about the canals and drainage that are blocking the mainland, that's making those places flood as well?
So there's one thing that I do not understand, especially for Lagosians. I don't know, maybe I've not spent longer time in other states, but when you visit some areas during the dry season now, and then you will be confused, is this a gutter or a dustbin? Because people literally, that's their primary source to actually dispose their trash and all those things. You probably see a trash bin just beside that place, and then you see their gutters filled up. The most beautiful houses, the most luxurious streets, all those gated estates, for example. Or you look beyond the magnificent buildings. Just look through their drainage system. It's an eyesore. You see weeds growing in the gutters. You see different waste bin, and it's almost like they don't care. Maybe just because they drive in, so they don't know what goes on around the area. You just need to wind down sometimes when you drive through some area, and the smell that will hit you. And you imagine that how are people surviving in this area? But many of them do not care. I think they need to reintroduce the every Saturday environmental sanitation. I think they need to, and it needs to be a compulsory thing. Any house where you find the leads to any bit of trash and all that should be locked up, and then every resident of that apartment should be made to pay heavy fine.
Yeah.
When we begin to do that, we're going to see a change, because there was one notable thing that about the floods yesterday. Somebody said as much as we experienced floods, but we hardly saw styrofoams on the surfaces of the floods. And then this is coming after the ban on styrofoam. So it means the usage has dropped significantly. So as much as the disposal. So people are no longer throwing it everywhere. And so we know where the problem is coming from now. It's no longer styrofoams, but it's other plastic waste in the gutters. So,
and let's not forget that this is a very, it is now a health hazard, because we're still battling cholera.
Yeah.
So imagine, you know, we're talking about it earlier on Jasiri, and you know, one of us was saying that it's best that all these children going to school, these schools should even be shut down. If we have a flooding situation, it's an understandable situation. No children should be made to work, because most of them, they stay in, their schools are like in their remote areas, so they it's like a walking distance. So they literally walk to school. One is dangerous enough that a child is walking alone. Do you know how heavy the current of that rain is? I think, was it 2002 or 2022? That flood took a child in my area. A little child was swept away in front of the mother. That's a very disheartening situation. So it's risky enough that the child is having to walk to school on their own, then having to, you know, pack these dirty things with your legs, and then it's cholera. We're suffering cholera. We're battling cholera outbreak, and then all of these things are making it even worse. I'm very sure that if there's a would I say census taking now, it would have spread massively.
It probably would have, yeah.
So that's something again that we need to consider.
And just before we go now, you know, Blessings, you also talked about some kind of collective responsibility, not just the government but the people. And Shewa also made mention about, you know, waste disposal by the people. I want to shake this table now. Collective responsibility. There's the government, there's the people, there's the media.
Yes.
Yeah. What is our own role? I mean, I played my part yesterday by taking videos of the flood and the cars that were stranded and the traffic.
I played my part by getting early to work.
You know, so what do you think? And we have, you know, just a few minutes to wrap this up. But what do you think we could do? You know, media organizations, journalists, citizen journalists, as everybody else is. You know, not just necessarily saying or you know, feeling the island versus mainland battle. I mean, that ship has sailed. There's flood everywhere. Island, mainland, hinterland. There's flood everywhere. So what could we do as journalists? Let me start from Blessings first before we come to the flood correspondent.
So I think as you were talking, I was thinking, like, what is it that we have not done already? I mean, we've given them the reports, we've given them the news, but another thing we need to consider is, especially in Nigeria, we are a very skeptical set of people, right? We're like doubting Thomases. So, for example, those videos that came out that you made, a lot of people saw those videos and said, this is not a 2022 video, now old video. People did not believe it. And it's because most times these, you know, drainages, as much as it fills up fast, it also dries out fast. So when you get there, sometimes you don't see anything and you're believing that is a lie, they lied to us. So there's that element of distrust that people have. So I think that if we keep bombarding them with the videos, because it's one thing to hear, it's just like saying that, you know, there are elections in the UK, it doesn't really affect us. But when you see that it is hitting closer to home, you would see the reality. I feel like sometimes we relent more when we do the general, you know, everywhere is flooded. But when people see, because of course everybody is on social media now, and there's that element of fear, you know, that human angle where you see that the water is reaching up to here for someone, and then it's risky. So it's no longer a situation of, oh, it's flooded, you know, they're now making bans about it. Oh, Lekki, you say you're living in Lekki. No, it's past that. It's more dangerous than that now. It's a situation of, if you step out, you're risking your life. When they see, it's not an attempt to instill fear, but it's an attempt to make them realize how real this is. It's not content, right? This is real. So I feel like the more it's just for us to do more of what we're already doing. There's nothing that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing, and there's nothing that we should be doing that we're not doing, but it's just doing more of what we're already doing, putting it in their faces, making them see how real this thing is. If you put plastic in your gutter, once the rain is falling, you are at risk, right? Your life is at risk. It's not just your house or your property now. Your life is at risk. So once we do that more often, I think that people will conform.
I need to check your area. The passion with which you're saying this, I want to be sure your area is not flooded.
I was scared. So unfortunately, because we have a national orientation agency that is not doing their job as expected, so maybe media houses, as a form of CSR, maybe can sponsor media campaigns independently, and then keep repeating often and on, whether on their social media platforms, on the traditional platforms, to keep ringing it in the ears of people, not when the flood starts, even before it starts. So it can tell you from the issue, okay, when this happened, this is the health implications for yourself. So before you think of throwing the nylons, the campaigns can ring in your ears that, okay, before I do this, I think, then the government should also make an effective alternative for waste management.
True.
So, because a lot of people may complain that it's too expensive to, trash their waste material. So they should make it probably affordable and then more accessible for every area. It should be like a compulsory something, and then work with the media to let people know that you can now use this thing instead of throwing it in the bin. Work with even transportation companies, the downfall drivers, the keke marwa, even Okada. Like if anybody throws something outside from your boss, it's your responsibility to either harass the person, or maybe not harass, but make the person aware that no, this is wrong. I cannot take this. You have to get down, go and pick that thing. A little bit of inconvenience here and there, people would adjust. I saw that it was working during the Fashola regime. I don't know what happened after that.
I think it's even sad that we're talking about, reminding people to trash their waste properly. It's something that comes without saying. Anyway, thank you so much, Shewa, for joining us.
Thank you.
We're not going to put you inside any flood anymore, I promise. And thank you, Blessings, for the contribution as well.
Passion.
The passion in waste management. We'll go on this very quick break. When we come back, it's going to be the tail end of the show where we look into our crystal ball and tell you some of the things that we'll be expecting in the coming weeks. Do stay with us.